When is a coincidence just a coincidence? And when does it start to feel like something more? In this episode of the Parsonage Files, we're headed to Beatrice, Nebraska, the night that a church exploded right as the choir was scheduled to practice. Yet not one of the choir members was injured due to a series of odd coincidences. There were naps, car trouble, extra homework, last-minute chores, even an unexpected ventriloquist show. So, was this all just good luck? Or an example of divine intervention? Join us as we delve into the unbelievable coincidences that kept every member of the choir away at the very moment disaster struck.
Welcome to the Parsonage Files, where every week, Pastor Rick and his brother Rob dive into wild but true stories about faith, mystery, and church life. These are the stories Rick collects for his sermons, but most never make it into a Sunday message. Instead, listeners get it all. A UFO over a church festival, a saint squaring off with the Loch Ness Monster, encounters with angels, even John Wesley and ghosts. All true, all fun. Keep in mind, faith doesn't have to be dull or predictable. It can also be full of energy, curiosity, and amazing stories. Tales of the miraculous, the mysterious, and the meaningful. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Parsonage Files. My name is Rick Burke, and I am the pastor at Groveport United Methodist. I've been a United Methodist pastor for, well over 20 years. And typically here on the Parsonage Files, Rob and I talk about stories that I have collected but haven't quite found a way to use in a Sunday sermon. Until now. My friends, the story we are talking about today is in this week's sermon.
For better or for worse?
Well, that's what I say about every sermon.
Yeah.
We are talking about the Beatrice, Nebraska church explosion.
Hey, Pastor Rick?
Yeah.
It's Beatrice.
What do you mean?
This town is called Beatrice. Positive, it's called Beatrice.
It looks like Beatrice.
It does, but it's not. It is pronounced Beatrice. What story is it again?
It is the Beatrice, Nebraska church explosion. Is that right?
It is.
All right. And we did this story for the very first episode, and it was a little rough.
That's a very charitable term for the way it turned out.
So doing that episode got me thinking about this story, and when Thanksgiving rolled around, I thought, I know the exact story to use. And going back and looking at that first episode, I decided, you know what, Rob, we could do this episode better. So
To be fair, we couldn't do it worse.
No, that's true. So not only are we going to do a story that we've done before, we are also going to do a story that if you come to Groveport United Methodist Church, 10:30 a.m. every Sunday, online or in person, you will be able to hear this story live.
And see how it's woven into the best sermon in the history of sermoning.
Or the best sermon that's going to be at Groveport United Methodist Church the Sunday before Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
And if you are there, what you will find is Rob is going to be helping with the technology this Sunday. So you'll also be able to say hi to Rob.
As the world wants to.
Absolutely. So let's start off with the story. Okay, Rob, it was a cold day in Beatrice, Nebraska. It was March 1st, 1950, and one Joyce Black was just getting home after a long day. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Joyce?
Yeah, so she arrived home, tired, long day. You know how it is.
Absolutely.
And she lived across the street from the Westside Baptist Church where she attended.
Okay.
Member of the choir. And they had practice that evening. She was tired. And Joyce had sat down in the chair, got warm, got comfy. And as she would later be quoted as saying, I was just being plain lazy.
Sometimes you're like that.
Sometimes. And she just didn't want to go out in the cold to go to choir practice. Choir practice started at 7:25 on the nose. She kept putting it off. Finally, she got up, got her coat on, stepped out the front door at 7:27 p.m. Just as she left the front door, the church exploded. Its heavy wooden roof collapsed. Walls came down. Fire erupted. Chaos was everywhere. The steeple was thrown into a nearby street. I mean, it was utter disaster.
So it was a big explosion.
Big gas explosion. Knocks her back. And she would later say what impressed her was that sheet music from the choir, sheet music,
Yeah.
and songbooks came flying through the air towards her and landed at her feet.
Oh, wow.
She said it was really something to see. One of the songbooks landed right next to me and was still in good condition. I picked it up and kept it. I have it today as a reminder of that fateful moment. So she walks out the door, go to choir practice, and the church literally explodes. So she was certain that everyone had perished in her choir. And she was so certain because the choir was never late. Ever. Choir practice began at 7:20, and for 30 years it had started at 7:20.
Not 7:15.
Not 7:15.
Not 7:30.
Not 7:30. 7:20. Choir director Martha Paul made that a very clear point. Punctuality wasn't just encouraged; it was pretty much non-negotiable, Pastor Rick.
So if you were on time, you were late, and if you were late, you just didn't come.
Right, just don't show up.
Just don't show up.
You're not singing on Sunday mornings. You wanted a place in her choir, you were there on time. Her daughter, Martha's daughter, Marilyn, who served as the accompanist and pianist for the choir, would later recall that her mother's expectations were really unwavering. No one was ever really late, she would say. There might have been a rare exception here or there, but I honestly can't remember in 30 years of a single time when someone didn't show up on time.
Sounds like a lot of small town choir directors I've known.
So when the explosion happened at 7:27, you could see what Joyce,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, she assumed the worst.
Absolutely. So there's this large explosion. She sees the church collapse. There's fire. There's smoke. It's dark.
Firefighters turn up. They're battling the flames. The church is completely consumed. Joyce hoped for the best, but feared for the worst, right? She knew everyone was gone.
So Joyce kind of wanders over to the church.
She wanders over to the church, through the smoke, and as she's standing there, she sees coming through the smoke Reverend Walter and his wife Eunice Klimple and their daughter, 18-month-old Marilyn Ruth.
Okay.
Reverend Klimple had been there earlier in the day, and he had gone into the church, lit the furnace, and had gone home for dinner, which was his normal practice for choir nights. There was a little special something in the air because the choir was practicing for the Easter cantata, and he loved himself a good cantata.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? So Reverend Klimple always would bring his wife Eunice and their daughter with them. It was just a good family evening,
right? Yeah,
hearing some singing,
kind of a social time,
event, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And typically they would arrive around 7:10. But that night, the Reverend was explaining to Joyce that they were running late because baby Marilyn Ruth had stained her dress, and his wife Eunice had a choice to make: either bring the child
with the stained dress,
or iron a clean one. Their clock was off by a little bit. So when she looked at the clock, she's like, I've got time to iron. Eunice said later on that she had this overwhelming feeling that she needed to put a clean dress on the baby. So she took the time and she did it. And that choice would later come to have saved their lives.
Okay.
The next person to appear in the smoke, and maybe the most shocking Joyce would come across, would be the choir director, Martha Paul, and her daughter, Marilyn. Martha, who ain't late for nothing ever, Paul, turns up late. Typically, choir director and her daughter would be there about 30 minutes ahead of time. Get warmed up, practice, get things set up.
Get the music out, all that good stuff. Chairs set up.
Yeah. And so this evening, they were on time. They were on course to being on time. And daughter Marilyn, who was the high school girl who was the accompanist, she kind of felt fatigued after eating dinner and decided she was going to take herself a little nap. 15 minutes wouldn't hurt. Ended up being about a half an hour before she woke up. And the really odd thing would be her mother, the choir director, also felt fatigued after dinner and took a nap. Both of them waking up at 7:15. They rushed, put themselves together, and headed to church, mortified that they were running late, obviously.
Yeah. And this was totally out of the norm for them.
Totally. 30 years of experience. This lady was never late, demanded punctuality, and for whatever reason, had a fatigue that she couldn't overcome and took a brief nap that saved her life. The next person to emerge was Herbert Kipf. He lived a few blocks away from the church himself, and he was late because he was preoccupied working on church business. Again, a shocked Joyce who, well, hey, I'm glad to see you, but why are you running late? He had been writing a letter to the denominational headquarters. He was on a committee at church and was corresponding with their denominational offices, and he felt that it was super important to get that into the mail that evening. He would be later quoted as saying he had an overwhelming feeling that he needed to get this task accomplished. He had put it off for too long, and it needed to get done right then. His mother had been hounding him. He lived with his mom.
Yeah.
But hounding him to get going because he was running late, and she didn't want to hear about him being late on Sunday morning. But he ignored her. He said, Mom, I have got to get this done.
This is how you know it's a true story.
Right. That is true.
Because that is so true to life.
That is a
Absolutely.
true church story right there.
Yep.
So he said that he just had this feeling that he just had to finish this letter. He couldn't feel good about himself, couldn't enjoy his evening unless he finished the letter and got it into the mail. It made him late, saving his life.
Okay. And as Joyce is wandering around, who else does she run into?
She sees coming out of the towards her, LaDonna Vandergrift. She is a high schooler, and she was late because she was working on a math problem at home.
As one does.
As one does. She had been working on a geometry homework, and this unusual sense of resolve compelled her to stay and find a solution to this problem. She would later say the story makes her sound like she was some type of math student, super studious, and she really wasn't.
But for some reason, she just had this overwhelming urge to finish this math.
She had to solve this problem and could not leave until it was figured out. It was a determination she would later say that she never had before, never had after. But in this one instance, she was consumed with this math problem and couldn't leave until it was done. Again, saving her life.
So totally out of the norm for her then.
Totally out of the norm. She was not a geek. I can say that as a geek. You can say I can say one geek to another. #go geeks. But she was not. But in this instance, she had a feeling that she could not explain. It said, you must stay here and work on this math problem.
So LaDonna had two friends with her.
She had two friends in the car with her, Royanna and Sadie Estes. They were sisters. And they lived next door to LaDonna, and they usually drive themselves, but they couldn't get the car to start, which was weird. The car had worked fine earlier in the day, was known to be a reliable vehicle. They hopped out of the house, hopped in the car, and couldn't get the car to start.
Just wouldn't start.
Wouldn't turn over. So they went in and called their neighbor, LaDonna, and said, hey, are you home still? And can you give us a lift? And LaDonna's like, I am home. I'm working on a math problem. Happy to give you a lift once I'm done with this problem. Now, there's no word what the Estes sisters thought, but you can just imagine their annoyance with, really? Now we're going to be late because you need to do this math problem? But they really didn't have a choice. They could either walk in the cold to church or wait for their neighbor to finish up her math homework.
So they waited for their neighbor.
They waited for their neighbor, and then they all came together.
Which honestly is what most of us would do.
Right. So, I mean, you're not going to walk in the cold. I mean.
Oh, no.
The next person to emerge was Ruth Schuster and her young daughter, Susan. Ruth was a young mom and had her daughter in tow with her most Sundays. How adorable is that, though? You just imagine a little girl, a little bow in her hair, going to choir practice with mom. And usually they were there always on time, like everybody else.
Okay.
But that day, Ruth decided to stop at her mom's house. And her mom was having a church meeting herself at her home.
Right.
And needed a little help getting things ready to go, sandwiches on the table, whatnot. And that time just got away from her. And so Ruth and her daughter turned up at the church after the church exploded. Time getting away from her turned out to have saved her and her young daughter's life.
Oh, wow.
Next person to turn up at the church was Harvey All. He was the brother of Ruth Schuster, and he was late because his wife was out of town and he was doing the single dad thing. Now, this was the most believable.
No more explanation needed right there. We know why Harvey was late.
And he was caring for his two boys, and he was going to be bringing them along, and things just got out of hand, and they were running late. And that saved his life.
I got to tell you,
parenting saved his life.
If I was one of his two boys, next time I got in trouble for something, I'd be like, hurry up, you're going to make me late. Maybe I'm keeping you from an explosion.
Right.
I mean, if you're one of those kids, you can use that forever. I'm telling you.
You're never gonna let that one.
Never going to let that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the final
Never
two.
let that go.
And so, as the search is going, the final two choir members to be found were Lucille Jones and Dorothy Woods, 18-year-olds. And their excuse was they were caught up listening to an episode of This Is Your Life on the radio. Lucille had intended on being there on time, was running early even.
Yeah.
And at 7 p.m., she flipped on the radio to give a quick listen to the show This Is Your Life. And the announcer revealed that the episode was going to feature one of her favorite actors, Edgar Bergen. And something stirred deep inside her, a feeling she couldn't explain.
That often happens when I say ventriloquist.
Right? She just had to hear this program. So she stayed, letting the show pull her in completely. I mean, who hasn't been mesmerized by Edgar Bergen? She was supposed to pick up her neighbor, Dorothy Wood. Completely blew that off. Dorothy comes over, perturbed, knocks on the door, like, what's the deal? And
I'm watching puppets, man.
It's on the radio, dude. He's not watching. It's on the radio. You don't watch puppets on the radio.
Oh, that's right. This is 1950.
But so yeah. And
So, all right, back up. If you're a ventriloquist in 1950 on the radio, do you even have to bring the puppet with you?
well, that would be a fair
this
question.
is a legitimate question that I now have, because you'd be kind of stupid to sit there in a studio with a, but
it would be dumb.
But if you're just doing the voices, can you allow your lips to move?
There's a questions that I do not have an answer.
Because why would you not let your lips move? No one's going to see you except maybe the radio host. And guess what? I'm pretty sure he knows that the puppet isn't really talking. Wait, you just gave me a look. Did I just ruin something for you?
No,
Okay. You are aware that the puppets don't really talk.
I am now.
Continue.
Creepy.
I got to tell you, I have never seen a ventriloquist. Oh, okay. Jeff Dunham's aren't particularly scary.
No, but
of course, I'm also not sleeping with them in my room either. So
maybe they're moving.
Oh my gosh, you know that a ventriloquist dummy is always walking around, like that one episode of is it Twilight Zone?
Yes, we have Telly Savalas.
Yeah. Where the one who's in control is the puppet.
Yeah.
So
any event, so that's why Lucille Jones and Dorothy Woods were running late. So Dorothy Woods was a friend of Lucille Jones who caught a ride with Lucille. So she turns up at Lucille's house, ready to go to choir. And Lucille's like, sorry, Dorothy, we're going to be late. I really need to listen to this episode of This Is Your Life. And later on, Lucille would explain that this wasn't normal for her. She liked Edgar Bergen, but the fact that she had this something stirred in her, she said, a feeling she couldn't explain that compelled her to listen to the entire thing was unusual. And as others have said, never happened again. One and done. This feeling of I must listen to this interview.
When I
Edgar
think
Bergen.
of ventriloquists, they generally don't stir oh my goodness, I can't miss this.
Right. So,
although Jeff Dunham sells out arenas, but we won't go there.
Are you done? Puppets are creepy.
Puppets are just genuinely creepy.
Dolls are creepy too. And
dolls.
I don't mess with haunted dolls, by the way. That's just, I'm tossing that out there to all haunted dolls listening. I respect you as individuals, and I will not be messing with you.
Because you went all the way to Key West and didn't see Robert the Doll.
Correct.
Which I couldn't believe that you would have skipped Robert the Doll.
So there's a story of Robert the Haunted Doll, and he's in a museum in Key West, Florida.
Yeah.
And famous story, famous doll. And he's in the museum, and I wouldn't even go into the museum to see other things.
Because if you take his picture and don't ask permission or do other things that upset him, then he'll give you bad luck. And there's all these letters where people write asking for forgiveness from Robert.
Correct. Much like Greg Brady messing with the tiki in Hawaii.
Correct. Yeah.
You don't do it.
Yeah, but you didn't mess with any of that because
didn't even go in. I respected him as a doll.
All right. So my brother is afraid of dolls.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
All right. So because of I was going to say Candace Bergen, but it was
Edgar Bergen.
Edgar Bergen. Thank you. The last two choir members were late.
Absolutely. So once everyone gathered around, so now the whole choir is there. The church is gone. It is
So Joyce
devastating.
went from thinking everybody that she knew was dead
Yep.
to now seeing that absolutely everybody was fine.
And when she, in that smoking rubble, and she saw all of the familiar faces emerging in the smoke,
Yeah.
everyone was okay. This sense of relief. I mean, everyone
Oh,
could imagine
absolutely.
that. You thought everyone you knew had
died.
Had died.
Yeah.
And everyone was alive and well. So Marilyn Paul, again, who's the daughter of the choir director and the accompanist, she
Yeah.
would later recall that once everyone realized there were no injuries, everyone was safe, they all kind of stood together, held hands, and offered a prayer of thanksgiving. Let's give thanks to God, someone said it in a quiet whisper, and they all did, grateful beyond words, and would never forget this moment. Herbert Kipp, who was one of the choir members, he later reflected that if a single mishap had delayed a busload of them, they were all on the same bus together, he could wrap his mind around that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just a coincidence.
Or if the road was closed because of
Right.
an accident or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But when there was a dozen individuals scattered across our entire town, each of us was detained by something small, something ordinary. He believed there was something more at hand. Fate, providence, God, call it whatever you will. That night, every delay became a small miracle. And none of them were a major miracle in their own. It wasn't like God came down and stood in front of the car and said, "Thou shalt not
Yeah,
drive it."
there wasn't like an angel with a flaming sword blocking the way to the church.
No.
It was just ordinary,
Small things.
small events that worked to keep everybody safe.
Right.
This is why I love the story. And this is one of the reasons why, when we talked about it a few months ago, it sort of stuck in my mind that this would be a great story for Thanksgiving time, because it reminds us that we often receive God's miracles in small, ordinary ways, but we look for big things. And that's why we miss the little things,
Absolutely.
right? And perhaps this Thanksgiving, we should think about the small ways, the ordinary ways that we have been blessed. Sometimes blessings can come in, well, things that we find at the time to be a little bit annoying. This is a great story. Again, that there is, this divine intervention aspect to it.
I mean, I was curious, Pastor Rick.
Yeah.
If it was divine intervention, was there something major that the church was going to accomplish later on that they all needed to survive to do? So I went out, used the Google machine, and found the church's Facebook page and website.
Okay.
Nice enough people.
Yeah.
Church's cute little church. And I say this in the most respectful way. It's not like it's a mega church that has millions of parishioners that they brought to Jesus.
Right.
It's not like that's not the reason they were saved. So then you start wondering, why were they saved? What is their purpose?
Well, I think you can confuse divine purpose with celebrity, or divine purpose with wealth, or divine purpose with any, name it, um, human attribute, right? If you think about in the Bible, most of the miracles that Jesus worked were for individuals. They were sometimes fairly miraculous, life-changing events for a person, but rarely did Jesus ever do anything that would make the news. And when asked about why did you do this, why did you not do that, most of the time, Jesus replied the reason for the miracle was to show the glory of God. And from that aspect, I think the uh, Beatrice church incident really shows that God cares for ordinary folks,
Right.
right? Also, people are still talking about it 50 or 70 years later. And I don't think we can discount that either. But
And then another question
Yeah.
popped up, and I'm sure other people have the same thought, is why would God save these people and not someone else who would have a similar circumstance?
well, it's like
Why is he picking winners
Why
and
did
losers?
Jesus heal one leper and not all of the lepers?
Yes.
We don't know.
Makes you wonder, though.
Right.
I wish I had something witty to say, something.
I wish I had something better
but
to
I
tell
don't.
you. But the answer is it's a divine mystery, and you can ask God when you get there.
See, normally the answer is go to church and ask your pastor the question.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know.
I don't know.
I just work here.
The Bible, does make it clear though that not everybody who quote unquote deserves a miracle receives one,
Right.
and not everybody who receives one quote unquote
Deserves it.
Right.
I've often think about this and other things, like trying to explain to an ant my what I'm doing out in the yard. No matter how hard, when I see that ant out there, when I've got the lawnmower, if I explain to them what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, why I'm moving them out of the way, it's for their own good. But there's no way I could make them actually understand my reasons because I work in a totally different level than them.
Or
is that silly?
Or but better yet, it would be like trying to explain to an ant your taxes.
That's a better analogy, Pastor Rick.
Right? You can't. So from our limited understanding, what we have to do is trust that God is working for the best. And from our limited knowledge, things might seem unfair.
Right.
Although fairness is a human concept, not really a biblical concept, really. Because anyway, so it sounds like a cop out, but the best we can say is we trust God, and because we trust God, what God does, we are okay with.
I thought you were going to say, because this is my podcast, I choose not to answer.
Now, I could give you some long-winded answer,
right?
And
which I hear you're good at,
right? I'm a pastor, right? Never get past our microphone, but the bottom line is, I don't know, but either does anybody else, right? All we know is we trust God because we trust Jesus, and Jesus trusts God, and we have seen God be faithful. So what we do is we simply trust that what God is doing is for our best interest, and we go from there. And when there is a miracle, we rejoice in that. We also look for the small miracles in our life, because one of the problems is, as I said, we often look for the big things. And when we're doing that, we miss all of the little stuff that's going on in our lives, all the ordinary stuff that's going on in our lives.
Right.
So, and being that this is the week of Thanksgiving, I think it's important for us to think about all the things we have to be thankful for.
And pie.
It's okay to be thankful for pie.
Oh, it really is.
It really, really is. So, this is a great story. It's not a particularly long story. They go on to rebuild the church. And
if you go to their website now, they have a history section that describes the events. They had completely normal people, normal church now.
And I told you that I served a church that exploded, didn't I?
What?
I served a church that exploded.
How did it explode?
Somebody blew it up.
On purpose? Shut up.
All right. So when I was serving Pleasant Chapel, way up in the middle of nowhere there, I was out in the country, and it was built on the corner of two roads, like, churches often are.
Right.
And there
crossroads of life.
Yeah. The crossroads, and there were a few houses around it. And this happened in like 1980, 81-ish.
Okay.
Right in that era, or early 80s.
So you were just a child. You had nothing to do with this.
Correct. And I did not live anywhere near. It was not.
You didn't like the pilot light.
No. What happened is it was out in the middle of the country, and the house right next to the church. It sat out a crossroads, and on crossroads are often houses built right there. And there was a house right next to the church, and it was an old church. It was built in the 1800s, and it had a fuel oil tank in the basement. And the neighborhood kids threw a couple of lit fireworks down the fill
To the fuel tank?
to the fuel tank, and it blew up the church.
Did anyone get hurt?
No one got hurt, but it burnt the church to the ground.
Yeah. Someone's gonna need to be doing some community
Right.
service.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I have no idea because it happened a long time before I was there. It happened 20 years before I was
And that's
there.
why it was a new church when you were
And that's
there.
why
a
it was
newer church.
For
Yeah.
out in the country. It was
Yeah.
like a 20-year-old church, maybe at that. And that's why it was newer, because the original church had burnt to the ground, and it was a tragedy. Obviously,
You said no one got hurt.
nobody got hurt, but with the insurance money, they were then able to build a 1-story handicap accessible church, where before it was an old 1800s church that
Right.
they never would have been able to make handicap accessible. And a lot of the folks that went there as they got older would have had issues.
So as they say, a blessing in disguise.
It was, it really was. Now they almost burned it down a second time.
How was that?
It was like the first or second Christmas after they built the new church.
Okay.
And somebody left a candle lit on Christmas Eve in one of the windows.
Oh, that's like everyone's biggest fear.
And it caught the sanctuary on fire, and they put that out. So by the time I got there 20 years later, you weren't allowed to use any live flames in that building of any kind. There were fire extinguishers everywhere. But yeah, so these things,
that Easter morning fire pit was not happening.
no open flames. The candles, even on Christmas Eve, we used the little battery powered stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah. Which is fine with me, because like candles and little kids always make me nervous. But,
As it should.
yeah. But so interesting story. Kind of a short story for us, but that's great. It's a holiday week. Rob, what do you think about this story? Do you think it was just a weird coincidence, or do you think it's divine intervention?
That's a good question. It's got to be divine intervention. I mean, if there's ever a case where divine intervention was the answer, this would be it. Let's say it that way. I mean, it's the odds are astronomical against that actually happening on its own. Not impossible. Would you not agree?
I would agree. It's not impossible for it
And
to
of
have
all the
happened on
stories
its
that
own.
we've discussed in the past, this one seems the most paranormal. And it's also the least scary, or not scary at all.
This seems, yeah.
It's also the most, I'm saying it's the most paranormal thing that we've discussed.
I would think that it would be harder to say that this is just a coincidence than it is to admit divine intervention.
Right.
To say that all these things lined up is just harder for me to believe than there was a divine hand involved in that.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. So, all right, Rob, real quick before we head out of here, what is your favorite type of pie to eat on Thanksgiving?
Oh gosh, it's tight. I mean, I love a good pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
But man, you can't go wrong with a chocolate pie with thick whipped cream on top.
Whipped cream or Cool Whip?
Oh, Cool Whip. That's what I mean. Cool Whip. I mean, come on.
I got to tell you, I have to agree. I like chocolate. Um, Pumpkin is okay, but I got to tell you, as I get older, it's starting to hurt my tummy.
Pumpkin pie?
Pumpkin pie.
Yeah, I noticed that last year.
Yeah, I know. I have been noticing it.
I used to down an entire pie and not hesitate, and now you eat like 2 pieces, and you're like, oh wow.
I'm telling you, I am getting to be more and more into an old person diet.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great Thanksgiving week. And until next time, stay safe. And if you are looking for a church home, we would love to have you at Groveport United Methodist, 10:30 a.m. Every Sunday, online or in person.
And if you make really good pies, you can also bring those to church as well.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.